Hey, thank you, Kathy, and thanks to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Casa de Espanol for this lovely environment. I know it's a little warm, but so far so good. Little breeze comes up, we're really going to be happy, right? So, I want to welcome you again on behalf of the League of Women Voters, because what we like nothing more than is civic participation. So here you are doing exactly that, and we appreciate that. The forum, as you heard, is sponsored by the Hispanic Chamber and Casa de Espanol. I'm Paula Lee. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Sacramento County, and I want to tell you a little bit about the League. The League is a nonpartisan organization. Although we are nonpartisan, we're also a political organization of women and men. We work at all levels of government, national, state, and local. And what we do is encourage the active and the informed participation in government. We do not support or oppose political candidates or parties. However, we do take positions on ballot measures, on legislation at the state capitol, and we speak out locally on public policy issues, and we're always informed by our studies and our positions. And you can find all of our positions on our website. So let me invite you, if you are interested in public policy, if you're interested in encouraging voting and civic participation, or you just want to support our volunteer work, we invite all of you to join us. The League is for everyone. We hold on to this name, League of Women Voters, out of the historical significance from 1920 when women got the vote. But we're open to everyone. Tonight our goal is to cover the issues of importance to this business community and provide a neutral space for you to ask questions. And so that's why the candidates will have their campaign materials on these green tables later after the forum, because we're trying to create a neutral space right now, and you can do all the campaigning and talking to these candidates you want and eating tacos now when we're finished. Okay. So please hold your applause till the end of the forum. The format for tonight will be each candidate will make 2 minutes as an opening statement, and then they'll respond to your questions, and they'll have 2 minutes to respond to those questions. As Kathy said, if you have a question, you can get a card back there, but we do have a lot of questions, but we also want to try to answer yours too. We often, and I will do this, review the questions just to avoid redundancy, and sometimes I combine questions if they're a similar nature. So if you do have a question, raise your hand and somebody will pick up your card. I see you had a card, the guy that's running away. He had a card in his pocket, so he can just, anybody that has a card can raise your hand or just bring it up to me. And then the candidates will have 2 minutes as a closing statement as well. The timer tonight, you'll be happy to know we have a timer, and she's right there in the white shirt. Teresa Riviera. No, the seats were taken, so she just took that one, so you can see her. And you know the drill, candidates. You know she's going to give you the 30-second sign. Hold it up so all the audience can see it. That allows the candidates to, wind it down. They're going to have 2 minutes, so they have a lot to say in 2 minutes, and they do it really well, I can tell you. And then we give them a stop sign after 2 minutes. So now it's time for you, audience, to turn off your cell phones if you haven't already. These candidates, as you know, running for mayor of Sacramento are Flo Kofer and Kevin McCarty. Kevin, you are going to go first, and I will be rotating who answers the questions. We don't, by the way, we don't direct questions to one candidate. The candidates answer all questions. So we thank you, candidates, for being here. And on behalf of the voters, we're glad you're here to answer these questions. On behalf of the business community, This is an important area for Sacramento and our future. So let's get started. And we begin with opening statements from Kevin McCarty.
2 minutes?
Okay.
2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for coming here tonight to this forum. You know, it's a big election at the national level, but I like to say that all politics are local, so decisions in our city are so important. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, Casa de Español, and the Hispanic Chamber for inviting us here today. I'm excited to run for mayor of my hometown, my city of Sacramento, but when I think about running for mayor, I think about my two 16-year-old girls, not just because they mastered their Spanish right behind here with Professor Maria and learned their language here several years ago, but because, you know, I think about them as 16-year-olds and what mayors do. They build for the future. They build for tomorrow, a year from now, and 8 years from now. So I'm running for mayor with the lens of them, the next generation. Certainly in the next year, I want to make sure my kids can walk home safely from school. That's one of the reasons I decided to run for mayor and lead the legislature, because they were walking home from middle school and had to dodge encampments to get home from school. It wasn't safe for them. It wasn't safe for anybody. I wasn't pleased by our city response. But I also think about them in 5 to 8 years from now, because I want to make sure that we have a city that welcomes people back, that makes them, after they finish college, want to come back to Sacramento, where they have ample opportunities for employment, having a safe city, cities that focus on building more housing at all income levels so they can thrive here, making sure we focus on our culture, our arts, our music, our sports, like we see here on our R Street corridor, making sure we tackle problems. And that's what I'm going to focus on as being mayor, someone who's been a city commissioner, someone who's been a city council member, and a state lawmaker, bringing experience to tackle the problems big and small, from public safety to our homeless response, to creating new jobs, to making sure we have programs for our youth and the next generation. I look forward to the conversation here this evening. Thank you.
Hola, me llamo Doctora Flo. Y gracias a Casa de Español and the League of Women Voters y también the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Estoy postulando para alcaldesa de la ciudad de Sacramento. Quiero ser su próxima alcaldesa porque soy un líder ejecutiva con 10 años de experiencia. Quiero mejorar los desafíos que enfrenta nuestra ciudad y aportar visión y energía para aprovechar nuestras fortalezas. Un poco sobre mí. Soy de Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Mis padres enseñaban el octavo grado. Asistí a escuelas públicas con un programa de estudios internacionales donde empecé a aprender español a primer grado. Tuvo maestros de los Estados Unidos y Puerto Rico, Cuba, España, Perú y México que enseñaron tanto el idioma como la cultura. A menudo no hablo en español porque no practico y tengo miedo de cometer errores, pero mis vecinos latinos son valientes y hablan inglés todos los días y yo quiero mostrar el mismo coraje. Good evening. My name is Dr. Flo Kofer, and I am running for mayor of Sacramento. My parents are both public school teachers and I am originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I'm running for mayor because I have executive leadership experience and the ability to lead our city forward to address our challenges and build on the great strengths that we have in our community. A little about me. I mentioned I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and both of my parents taught 8th grade. And I went to schools, public schools, that started an international studies program when I was in 1st grade. And I had teachers from all over, much of Latin America, including Peru and Mexico and Spain and Puerto Rico. And I was able to learn a lot about the culture and the language as well. And I wanted to just take this time to speak in both Spanish and English because I have a lot of fear about doing it because I make a lot of errors. But I know that our Latino community, for people who don't speak English natively, often speak in English every day, and they use a lot of bravery to do so, and I wanted to just honor that in the same way, and I apologize, I will not go over time in the future.
Thank you. First question for you, Kevin McCarty. Many small businesses are still recovering from the impacts of COVID-19. What specific programs or incentives would you introduce to further support their recovery and help new business emerge in this post-pandemic era?
Well, first of all, small business are the backbone of America, not just across our nation, but in California, but here in Sacramento. And small business is hard. It was hard before the pandemic. It was hard after the pandemic. So I think the city should reach out and make sure that we focus on reducing barriers for small business development. One thing I'd look about the restaurants here on this beautiful R Street corridor. You know, during the pandemic, we let people have their dining outside, al fresco. Beautiful outdoor dining. Well, after it was over, we told those same restaurants, shut down, reapply, and sometimes it was $300,000-$400,000 to build a permanent structure. Well, I've seen cities across California that have reduced those barriers and seen small businesses thrive. So I want to look for ways how we can help small business activate our corridors throughout our community. I also want to make sure we look at reducing barriers to get a building permit. It's really too complicated to go to the city hall and talk to somebody to get a permit. You need to make an appointment, get on your phone. So not everybody has iPhones. Not everybody has the opportunity to engage with a computer. Can't you just show up and talk to some people in person? So on my first day as mayor, I want to make sure we enact a Blue Ribbon Commission to streamline the building permit. Also, I think that we should be creative and look for ways how we can help small businesses thrive, but also start in the first place. You know, we charge these business taxes for businesses year after year. What about waiving them the first year or the first 6 months so that we get monies after year one or after 6 months? I think there's things that we can do that honor our small businesses, which are the backbone of Sacramento, and help them thrive, but also help the city. But most importantly, I've talked to small businesses up and down Sacramento where they want us to address our public safety issues and homelessness. I know those will be questions throughout the forum. We need to make sure we have firm answers to make sure our neighborhoods are safe so people want to go shop in our business districts and not go to Roseville or other jurisdictions or go online, to make sure our business districts are welcoming. Thank you.
We know that the pandemic was a real challenge to our business community, and that was part of the reason why our federal government gave us 2 sets of dollars to be able to support our small businesses and to be able to ensure our recovery. And now that those dollars have been spent and are going away, we need to be thinking long term about how we support our businesses. One of the ways is we need to think about every dollar of public investment, whether that's in our parks, whether that's in our libraries, whether that's in our arenas, wherever we're spending those dollars, we need to be thinking about how can we further benefit from those dollars. Can we support our vendors by having days in our park where they're able to actually sell? Can we make sure that people understand the pathway to being able to grow their business, and that we have a pot of money available at the city and with our surrounding partners to be able to support those businesses? That was the promise of Measure U. And I see Gina in the audience tonight, as well as Teresa and I think Marbella is here. They all served on the Measure U Commission, where we were supposed to be investing in our small businesses. That's what was promised to the voters. And unfortunately, with business as usual, we were lied to. And the dollars didn't go to our small businesses. And so I want to write our budget and make sure that we're spending the dollars where we promised voters, especially the almost 40% of our voters who are Latino, that we were going to invest in businesses, and we broke that promise. I also want us to be able to, when we do business with the city, know what's happening. We should, you know how your pizza is being baked and where it is? Oh, it's in the oven now. Oh, it's on its way out the door. We should have the exact same thing when it comes to applying for permits from for our small businesses, making sure that you know where it is and when you should expect the city to respond back to you. It should not be a black box where we have no clue when you're going to hear back and your business is held up. And also, I want to make sure that as we are thinking about investments, we're thinking about passing a suite of policies to make sure small businesses can start up and be supported. And that's why I'm so grateful to Victor Wong and the folks at Right to Start that are really thinking about building a culture of entrepreneurship in the city of Sacramento.
Flo, workforce development remains a pressing issue for many small businesses. How would your administration collaborate with community colleges, vocational schools, and apprenticeship programs to ensure that small business have access to a skilled and diverse workforce?
Well, one of the ways that I want to work on this is I'm proud to be endorsed by Los Rios College Federation of Teachers, as well as Sac City Teachers Association, which means that the teachers in K-12, as well as those who are working in our community colleges, have endorsed my campaign because they want to be partners with the city on this. one of the key things that we need to do is make sure that our students know from the time that they are in high school what their options are. And I was so proud to attend at Grant Union High School recently a fair that was for the trades. And we had black and brown companies out there talking to people about the trades and how they could make living wages right out of high school. That's one of the things that we should have championed. And I was sad to see that there was no media there, that there was, despite advertising this, and someone actually said to me, they'd be here if there was a shooting at Grant, but they're not here when we're doing something positive. And I want to bring attention to the things that are positive that are happening in our communities that are actually helping our workforce to develop. I also want to make sure that we are partnering when it comes to certificate programs and others with our local leaders so that people are being developed into the workforce they need. And I want to be a better partner, especially in making sure that they're running well, the programs that we invest in to be able to support our people who want to learn businesses, whether that's SETA, whether that's the Urban League, the places around town that are doing this work. I want to make sure that they're up to date on the curriculum that they're using, and we're not preparing people for jobs from 1996, but we're thinking about green jobs that are going to address the economy. We're thinking about jobs that are going to make sure that people can meet the technological future that we have, because that technology gap is real. And if we don't catch up, our young people will not be prepared for the jobs that are coming forward. And so that's what I want to do, is work with the existing organizations that have been doing this work and making sure they're up to date and they're serving the small businesses that exist in Sacramento best by making sure we're all talking to one another and collaborating truly.
This is a key question, not only for our economy, but for our young people. We think about the old Sacramento, the old California. You could have a high school diploma and get a job at Campbell's Soup, at McClellan or Maythorpe, and be able to have a job, buy a house, save for your retirement, save for your kids' get married. That's not the reality anymore. Our young people need advanced education, whether it's college or UC, maybe not, just beyond high school. So we need to make sure that we help connect the dots. And that's why I love the programs that the city run. Youth development programs that are part of our summer jobs programs, part of the Measure L program that we just put this tax on cannabis revenues. We're focusing on how we could have summer job programs for our youth and our next generation. So we need to make sure that the city's mission, of course, people think usually, it's our parks, it's our trash, it's our water, it's our police, it's our fire. Certainly those are the big five, but our parks and recreation have a big role in helping shape the next generation. I know, because our kids really went through an amazing program here where they taught kids how to fill out a resume, how to get a bank account, how to show up for an interview. Those programs really matter and can help get young people in the pipeline to further careers. As far as our employers, we need to help make sure that they have an opportunity to have the workforce that they need to thrive. And when I talk to employers, one thing that they focus on is I say, why are you in Sacramento? Why aren't you in Reno or Merced or somewhere else? They love being here because they can focus on a skilled workforce. We already have that, but how can we enhance it? I'm a product of community college. I know that they help give people a second chance in life like they helped me and my mom and my brother. I actually wrote the bill that makes community college free now. So we need to make sure that young people know that you can go to community college for free. And that's something I think the cities can do, is be the conduit, because people have problems and they come up to us and ask for solutions. And we can't say, we're the city, I'm the mayor, that's the Los Rios trustees' job. No, our job is to help connect the dots to help families thrive. Thank you.
Kevin, what is your stance on reducing regulatory barriers for small business? And how would you streamline the process of starting and growing a business in Sacramento?
Yes, I briefly answered that in my opening. I'm good, but I'll expand upon it now. On the first day that I'm mayor, if I'm fortunate enough to be the mayor of Sacramento, I went to focus on auditing our homeless spending, which I'm sure we'll talk about later for the homeless question, and create a blue ribbon commission to reduce barriers to get a building permit. I've talked to big apartment developers, restaurants, small business who have said it's way too complicated to get a building permit in the city of Sacramento. So I think, how could we cut red tape and help businesses thrive and get open faster? So cities don't control a lot of things. We don't control interest rates. We don't control labor costs. We don't control material costs, but we control time and certainty. So if we focus on that, and lead on that and show small business developers who are building housing, but also restaurateurs, small entrepreneurs, what we're doing to lower barriers, to defer fees until the second year. That'll say, you know what? I'm thinking about two businesses, one in Davis and one in Sacramento. Sacramento is being outward and helping reduce barriers. I want to go to the city of Sacramento. I also think there are ways how we can reduce fees. A lot of times we get these projects come in, think across the street. There's a housing project right here that has 100 units, and they have to pay their fees for each unit. What if you had them pay their fee when people moved in, not when they got their application? It would help streamline the process and motivate them to start sooner, and then they can recoup it at the back end. What if when a small business came to Sacramento, we said, you know what? We're going to waive your fee for your small business license for the first year. We'll start collecting money on year 2. Help them thrive and the city thrive. We need to think outside the box to help grow our small business and our economy here, especially because we can't always be counting on our state jobs. And we see the ups and downs with that with state employment. We need to further diversify our economy, and this is something that I'll lean in on as mayor. Thank you.
Can you repeat the question?
What is your stance on reducing regulatory barriers for small business? And how would you streamline the process of starting and growing a business in Sacramento?
So one of the things we need to be in Sacramento is a city that works. And that means that when we reach out to our city, we need to be able to get responses from them. And we need to have an environment where when people want to start something, we are the wind at their back and not the brakes that are being put on and pumped to stop them from being able to succeed. And so part of what we have talked about is making sure that our systems function as they should. And that means having clear timelines for how long it should take for you to be able to hear back from the city when you have submitted an application, when you have moved along during the process. I mentioned, you can find out now online where your pizza is, but when you submit an application to the city, it's a black box and you're hoping that someone's going to get back to you. And it's uneven how long it takes to get back and what that answer is going to be. And so we want to streamline that confusion. That's step one. But step 2 is also making sure that when we're thinking about these small businesses and how they are able to function, that we're also prioritizing their voices in what we do. Earlier this year, we had a business operations tax that was on the ballot, and I opposed it. Not because business operations taxes are overall a bad idea, but because I do believe in process, and I live by the adage of nothing about us without us. And when the business community, especially small businesses and people who were sole proprietors who had licenses said, we were not consulted about this, and this is particularly burdensome to us, but not so much for the larger businesses, I said, you know what, you're right, we should revisit this by talking to one another. So one of my commitments is that we are going to have a small business roundtable that has an opportunity to be able to weigh in, and that we are building pieces of legislation together so that people who are outside the community are not legislating for us. Because we know how terrible that feels, and we want to be in a city that listens to us, that respects us, that partners with us, and that has a vision that we can execute together for what the future of Sacramento looks like.
Flo, how will your administration ensure that minority-owned small businesses, especially within Sacramento's Hispanic community, have equitable access to city contracts, business loans, and development programs?
This is a great question, and I know that at the state level, we have attempted to address some of this, and I want to do some of the same things at the local level, because a lot of times people think, because of Prop 209, that we can't think about businesses, especially Latino-owned businesses, but we can. We just can't condition getting contracts on someone's race or ethnicity. And so what I want us to do is make a clear commitment that we want more Latino businesses in the city of Sacramento. We can say that out loud. Prop 209 is not a gag. We can say out loud. And we can also say that we are committing to making sure that we are going to support those businesses in their development, that our programs are going to do outreach, and that we are going to be actually accessible to the businesses that are here, that we're going to be proactive in our approach of getting to vendors who are street vendors, getting to smaller businesses that may want to grow, and making sure they're aware of the opportunities, and that we have budgeted responsibly so that we have a pool of money to be able to support them. that's really what it looks like to be able to effectively outreach. Is we need to, when some of these propositions are passed, we need to make sure we understand what's in them and what's not, so that we can operate at the maximum of our capacity. We should be proactively outreaching to our Latino communities, and when we're not, we are committing to doing the same thing we've always done, which is making sure that some communities are left behind. And my commitment to you is that that will not continue. We will say out loud what our goals are, and we will make sure that there are resources dedicated to supporting those goals.
Yes. Repeating the question. Kevin, how will your administration ensure that minority-owned small businesses, especially within Sacramento's Hispanic community, have equitable access to city contracts, business loans, and development programs?
This is a key issue in the future of California. As Dr. Kofer noted, we have to live within the confines of Proposition 209 and no racial preferences. But we have a great model here that the city of Sacramento, frankly, hasn't followed, and that's SMUT. They've done an amazing job with the Black and Latino and the Asian Chamber of Commerce's to create policies that focus on small businesses, focus on people that are located within the geographic boundaries of Sacramento, targeting and recruiting, just not the end-all preference at the very end. So I think that we can get close to that line without crossing the line and helping small business without having a racial preference. That's one thing that I think that we should, in all of our contracts, specify that we want to help small businesses are located within the city of Sacramento. And proportionally, the majority of those are minority-owned businesses that we know. One thing that also I think is really important is to make sure we focus on language and culture, making sure that when we talk about not just a grant to build a new city hall or a building or a stadium or a hotel downtown, but smaller opportunities, landscaping opportunities, procurement opportunities, and make sure we're going to our small business corridors, having appropriate, language appropriate translation and services to make sure we meet people where they are. We can't always assume people are going to be coming us to the city of Sacramento. How do we outreach to different communities? So at the end of the day, Sacramento is a very diverse community. We're 30% Latino, 30% Caucasian, 20% API, 10 to 15% African American. We need all of our ethnic communities and small businesses to thrive for Sacramento to thrive.
Kevin, please provide 2 examples of what you have done to encourage and support entrepreneurship in the Latino Spanish-speaking business community.
Yeah, the first one that I was really proud of is I'm a big fan of our food vendors, the taqueros down Franklin, and the paleteros in the community, that those individuals are out there hustling, trying to make a living for their families. They don't always have the proper licenses and insurance and know about the reglas. So what can we do to help them? So I partnered and asked our community, hey, how can we help those? So a couple years ago, I helped sponsor a grant program to make sure that we can help bring these individuals in out of the shadows and become licensed and thrive here in Sacramento. I see the county of Sacramento now wants to go after the taco shops, the taqueros that serve amazing tacos de birria por la noche por la Franklin. That's my favorite right there. But how do we make sure that we keep people healthy and thriving at the same time? So that's one thing that I want to do in Sacramento is how can we help small businesses? The other thing that I've always thrived on and prided myself on is inviting people to the table. I don't necessarily know all the solutions, but you do. So when I was a young council member and they decided we wanted to hire a new police chief, create a new policy on the general plan, I made sure that we outreach to all ethnic communities so they can have a voice at the table. Because I believe that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So that's something that I've done as a council member and as a state lawmaker, bring diverse voices to the table so they have an opportunity to engage in our decision-making process.
I am really deeply committed to entrepreneurship in our communities in Sacramento, and in particular in our Latino community, because of the size of the population and because of the importance of being a champion of our small businesses. And so that was part of the reason why I joined the Measure U Community Advisory Committee, because I was excited about the 3 promises that were made to voters, that we were going to focus on inclusive economic development, that we were going to focus on affordable housing and make sure we had an affordable housing fund, and that we were also going to focus on the creative economy. Because I see the diversity of Sacramento as one of our greatest strengths and something that I want us to build on if we are going to have a strong economic future. And so we fought really hard, especially for our budget recommendations, to honor those promises that were made to voters in Sacramento. And that's part of the reason why I'm running for mayor. So I have not worked in the traditional business space, but I have worked in public health. And one of the things we always focus on is making sure that our partners reflect the diversity of our communities, that we are thinking about the ways in which there may be administrative challenges and there may be financial challenges when small nonprofits are trying their best to be in new spaces, and how do we minimize those? And that's the same blueprint that we need to be able to address the challenges with our small businesses in Sacramento. And so I want to be able to do that. And I also want to make sure that we are meeting people where they are. In 2022, our city auditor put out a report showing that the city of Sacramento had no plans or resources for how they were going to speak to anyone other than native English speakers. And so that was why it was important to me, even though I was the only person in this race who had never run for elected office before and had no dollars to be able to roll over from a previous campaign, that I made sure my website for mayor was available in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, Hmong, and Chinese, the 5 most spoken languages in Sacramento, because it's not just about platitudes. It's about actually putting action behind your values, and that is something that is important to me. And similarly, I want to make sure that we're hiring people at City Hall who reflect the diversity so we can continue this process.
Flo, what specific measures will you take to ensure that economic growth in Sacramento benefits all neighborhoods, including historically underserved areas like Del Paso Heights and South Sacramento?
Well, again, I believe in putting my money where my mouth is. So when we had 916 Flow Fest last year, it was in Del Paso. When we had our Mardi Gras party, it was in the South area. We have made sure that we have, through our campaign, supported small businesses around this city, specifically to make sure that we were doing what we plan to do moving forward, which is making sure that there are events, that there are points of destination in every single one of our communities, because everyone deserves to have a thing where they live that they're proud of. That whether it's the Meadowview Jazz Festival or whether we're doing something along the Del Paso corridor, like the bicycle party that happens there, we want to make sure that people have a pride of their own community. And when we do that, that there are economic opportunities for the businesses that exist within that community. And so that's my commitment. My commitment is to make sure that when we are passing a budget, we are doing an equity analysis, working with our Racial Equity Commission to make sure that our investments are being spread across the city. You know, one of the things that I wish when Golden One was put up was that we had actually thought about how we could maximize the fact that the city is spending $20 million of taxpayer money every single year to support that arena. And is there a business from every single ethnic group in Sacramento that exists inside? Is there a business from every single city council district in Sacramento that exists inside? Have we actually distributed that opportunity, where we took $20 million from many people who will never afford a ticket to go to an event at Golden One? Are their communities going to benefit from that public investment? That's my commitment to our underserved communities, is no matter where we go, that we're bringing the entire city with us, that we're thinking outside of just the downtown corridor, but we're thinking broadly about how do we make Sacramento a cool place for people to bop around to different places and get the full flavor of what it means to be here.
Thank you. You know, downtown is the heart of Sacramento, but everywhere I go to in Sacramento, they say, what about us? What about us? So we need downtown Sacramento to thrive, to get more money to spend in other areas. One thing I would do right out of the gate is look at these underutilized state buildings, turn them into housing. You know that 45% of the buildings downtown, the core, pay 0 property taxes, and a lot of them are vacant now because of the remote work. How can we turn those into private sector hands, build more housing, bring more life downtown, and get money in the city to invest in other areas of Sacramento? You know, we used to have redevelopment where we could plow back money into these commercial corridors like Del Paso, Stockton, Franklin, Northgate. I like that approach, and looking how we can take a sliver, as Mayor Steinberg proposed last week in his final State of the City address, taking a sliver of tax dollars in these areas that have economic development projects and reinvest back in those areas. Because we cannot always focus just on our downtown core. We need to focus on neighborhoods where we all live. And too often we're forgotten. It's not always just business. It's making sure we have, safe streets in those areas. So people want to walk to shops down in those corridors as well. So looking for multiple opportunities to reinvest in our commercial corridors will be a priority of mine as mayor of Sacramento.
Kevin, recently the city auditor provided a report on the 2024 city staff diversity. It was notable to see that whites earning over 120K is 62%, with Latinos earning over 120K is at 16%. If you become mayor, what plans would you implement to address this disparity?
Yeah, I saw that and it spoke volumes. There are some traditional jobs in the city of Sacramento that are higher pay than others. Look at firefighters. Look at public safety officers in the police department. Look at workers in the solid waste field. Solid waste field is more diverse than water, and public safety, police and fire are not. One thing I want to make sure that we focus on how we can diversify our public safety force. One time I took a ride-along with the Sac Fire Department down on Franklin, and we got a call, and a car rolled over, and we had to wait for a translator to get there. And I was like, yo hablo español, vámonos, ¿qué pasó? ¿Dónde está tu hija? And I was asking the family, where's the other person? Then roll over in the kid. I couldn't believe that there was 8 firefighters on scene. We didn't have somebody to translate what was happening live. So not only is it a matter of life and death, it's a matter of good public policy as well. So I really support these programs at our schools, our apprenticeship program the city currently has, how it can bring more diversity into our public safety positions. But I also think that this is a wake-up call that we need to be mindful about these things. It's one thing to learn about it, but another thing to do something about it. So as mayor, I'll make sure that our city administration, whether it's my employment at City Hall, I have a very diverse staff over the years, I always have. I'll make sure my City Hall staff reflects the communities of Sacramento, but also our city charter officers, our department directors in other areas, making sure that our rank and file leaders as well as the top management reflect the great diversity of Sacramento.
Reading that report was depressing and demoralizing because I believe Sacramento can do better than that. And it's not enough for us to just accept that there are problems. We also need leadership that's going to do something about it. And so this is what has stood me apart from the field of candidates I was running against in the primary and even my opponent now, is that I have executive leadership experience. A decade of running organizations and setting goals for the organization about where are we going together and bringing executive leaders together to make those difficult decisions, collaborating and identifying the things not just that we have 5 votes on, but that we have 9 votes on. Because we're really closer in Sacramento than a lot of us would like to believe. And so let's start with what is our shared vision for where we're going as a city, and then let's make sure every single one of our staff, our city clerk, our city attorney, our city treasurer, and our city manager have performance goals as well. So they know what part of the vision they're a part of, and they also know what's expected of them in terms of success. See, at the city level, we're not just responsible for passing legislation. That is the privilege of the legislature. They can pass legislation, and then there's a governor and many department heads to be able to do the implementation. But at the city, you have to follow the swing all the way through. And you also have to be someone's boss every day that's responsible for the implementation. And I have the experience doing that. And so part of what that means is that we set goals within our city that we want to make sure that opportunities are provided to our Latino staff, that we are recruiting in ways. That does not mean we make hiring decisions based on race and ethnicity, but we can do every other effort and we can hold our staff accountable to those goals. Hope is not a strategy, a wish is not a strategy, and platitudes are not strategies. Plans reflect strategy. And that's what you get with me as a public health professional, are plans that can be executed and that we can be held accountable for. Unlike the status quo, which is always, we don't want to commit to anything because we don't want to be held accountable to anything.
Flo, the city's budget has often been seen as a reflection of its priorities. Can you outline how you would balance Sacramento's budget while ensuring critical funding for small business support and public safety?
I love this question, because what I will not do is harm any of the existing services that our city is trying to do. What I will do is enhance them. I will make sure that we don't get caught up in the how, but we gotta get caught up in the outcomes. And to me, that means, for example, for public safety, we have officers currently spending 32% of their time on non-police crimes. That is inefficient. And we have 115 vacancies that our police chief has said we have no one in the academy to fill, and that we currently have a deficit and cannot pay to be able to add more people to our roster. So what we need to be doing is looking at public safety and saying, how can we effectively and efficiently spend these dollars? How can we make sure that every dollar we spent is spent with maximum return on investment? And if we do that, we will be able to streamline some of the ways that we have spent money and actually get good outcomes. Because what I've heard across this city in every single neighborhood is that response times are too slow, despite the fact that over the last 4 years, we've increased the police budget by $100 million. So it's not the money, it's how we spend the money. And that's the eye that I'm going to be taking to our entire budget. In a $1.7 billion budget, there are some ways we're spending money that we could streamline without having to cut any services. Let's start there. And then let's talk about the things that we invest in now that we know are going to grow in the future. It is short-sighted, for example, to have let Rio City Cafe shut down when they were not only paying rent to the city of Sacramento, but were also bringing in tax revenue. That will not happen under my watch. I will make sure that we invest long-term in the investments that are necessary to make sure we don't lose money in the long term. We deferred maintenance, and so they had to shut down because we were the slumlord as the city. That can't happen. And so those are the ways that I will really try to make sure we're budgeting towards a vision for the future, and also making sure that we're streamlining so we're operating with maximum efficiency.
You know, the issue of the budget is, first of all, a big picture, one that I'm really concerned about. Because when I was on the council 10 years ago, we had the Great Recession. We had massive unemployment, huge drops in property tax and sales tax, foreclosures. We had to lay off police officers, shut fire stations, shut down swimming pools in our parks, community centers. Well, now we have a budget deficit with a growing economy for every year for the past 15 years, but for the little blip during the pandemic, which we bounced back. So how is it that you have more money, but more of a problem? So I think that we need to do is look under the hood. That's something that I'm going to bring to the table, having chaired a budget committee at the Capitol for 9 years, having been as a city council member, to make sure, focus on our core. Are we using one-time money for ongoing expenses? Are we focusing outside of our mission and our core? Because if you look at the city general fund, 85% of it, 85% of discretionary general fund are spent on three things: police, fire, and parks programs, parks and youth programs. Are we focusing on areas that aren't part of our city core? Because if we are, we have a budget deficit, that's not what our constituents want. So I want to make sure we zero in on what our priorities are and dedicate our resources there. But you know what? We can't cut our way out of this. We can't tax our way out of this. We need to grow our economy. So I want to look at these state buildings over here downtown. How can we turn those into private sector hand, build more housing, address the issue of the day with homelessness and housing, and bring more money in the city coffers? I want to help Aggie Square thrive over there in the south part of Sacramento and Stockton Boulevard. Bring more money in through our hospital and medical districts there. I want to streamline business permitting process to help people thrive here in Sacramento, because growing our economy means more money for our key city priorities.
Kevin, Sacramento's Hispanic community represents a significant portion of the population, yet Hispanic representation in city staff, leadership, and on boards and commissions remains limited. How will your administration work to ensure that the city's leadership and decision-making bodies better reflect the diversity of the community?
Well, I always will be a friend and an ally of our Latino community, not just because I speak Spanish, not just because 3 of the 4 people that live in my house outnumber me and are Latinas, and that's a powerful numerical equation right there. But because I know that the success of our Latino community is the success of Sacramento. You know, equal population right now, Latinos and Caucasians. The next few years, it's going to increase. We need that this community to succeed so Sacramento succeeds. And when we look at our employment, whether they're from our city charter officers to our chiefs, to rank and file, to throughout, we need to make sure that we reflect. Also, boards and commissions. I had an opportunity to chair that the committee that appoints boards and commissioners many years ago. And that was one of my priorities, to go back and outreach to the Hispanic Chamber, to other groups, to La Familia, to organizations throughout Sacramento, to make sure we had applicants for every board and commission. It's a priority of mine to make sure our government looks like the people of Sacramento that we are governing. It's something that's just part of my plan as mayor of Sacramento. It's been in my values that I've led with for the past 2 decades as a leader, and something I'll continue with as mayor of Sacramento. Thank you.
So again, the challenges with our staff diversity and also with the diversity of our appointments are really troubling, and they require a clear plan for what we're going to do to change this. And so I want our city to have a plan, finally, for how we are going to make sure that our city meetings are accessible. And what I mean by accessible is that they're accessible to people because of language, that they're accessible to people with disabilities, that we are actually reaching out, because there is an intersection in our communities. And so I don't just want us to think about this in one silo. It's also, does our disability commission have Latinos represented? Are we thinking about the ways in which language and ability combine to create barriers to access or lack? And so we want to be able to really think strategically about the entire city and be able to have some clear goals, again, about how we are going to reach out, what our priority is, and what our vision for the future is. What will be different if we act in this way? And so one of the main things we need to do is make sure that we're doing real outreach. There are too many people in our community who don't even know that boards, committees, and commissions are an opportunity for them, who have not been appraised of the opportunity to be part of some of the training programs, the City Management Academy, etc. And have we even made those accessible? I'm grateful that I was able to go to a theater accessibility program, because it got me to thinking about all these different dynamics of how we communicate within our cities and what we're really doing when we're saying we want to reach out and be a part of community. And I am looking forward to being a partner with organizations like the Hispanic Chamber, but also the nonprofits and the neighborhood associations, to be able to say, how do we get the message out? Teach us, be our partners on this, so we can do a much better job of setting goals and actually seeing the diversity of Sacramento reflected in both the volunteer positions as well as our staff positions within the city of Sacramento.
Flo. The growing unhoused population in Sacramento has raised concerns for small business, especially those in downtown areas and aging corridors. How would your administration address the unhoused crisis without negatively impacting the small business community?
So I want to just name up front that my opposition has been spreading misinformation about my position on this. So I want to be very clear that I have never proposed putting people experiencing homelessness in our city parks. Never. The parks you're using every day and that you're excited about, I have never proposed that. What I have proposed is that we look at every available vacant parcel in the city of Sacramento, because what I've heard at over 40,000 doors when I've knocked doors is that this is a crisis and it is everyone's priority, and that it's impacting residents who live here, both who are housed and unhoused, as well as our business community, and that people want proven, effective strategies and leadership to be able to address this. I also will not shy away from setting bold, ambitious goals, because we need to know what we're working toward so we can all work together. And that means making sure that our systems are working effectively. Instead of having people cycling in and out of our emergency department and our jail and our 911 calls and criminalizing people, which is ineffective strategy, we instead need to answer the question of where people can go and make sure that we put people on a pathway towards housing, so they can use the Medicaid opportunity through Medi-Cal to be able to get down payment assistance and wraparound services for those who have major medical conditions, where we're setting goals that we are actually going to see a difference on our streets by making sure safe rest villages are developed and prepared, where people can charge their cell phones and also be able to get a shower and have a place to be and be triaged into services. We need real solutions in the city of Sacramento, and there are proven effective strategies that have worked. This is not some, again, black box where we have to make things up. We can look at the things that have worked in other jurisdictions, and we can also make sure that we're working well together with all the partners so that we are effectively spending the dollars we have, because the city is not going to be able to fund this alone, but we should be able to partner.
You know, this is the issue of the day wherever we go, wherever I talk to. It's how you're going to address homeless. It's the issue why I decided to run for mayor. I was frustrated that my teenage girls, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, are walking home from middle school having to dodge encampments and dogs on leashes to get home. It wasn't safe for them. The response wasn't good enough. So I'm going to do 5 things as mayor. Number one, day one, in addition to the Blue Ribbon Commission, I'm going to order an audit on homeless spending. I don't think anything's illegal going on, but are we maximizing our dollars? Because our problems are this high, our money is this high. We need to make sure we're getting our biggest bang for our buck. Number 2, I'm going to enforce the law. We need to have no camping, no encampments at our city parks, in front of businesses, in front of restaurants, in front of neighborhoods. We need to enforce the law. Number 3, we need to partner with the county more, because let's face it, the county has 10 times more money than the city for homelessness and behavioral health. We are all in this together. We need to make sure we partner together with the county to have solutions that pool our resources. Number 4, we should focus on underutilized city lots, like the city former courtyards, where we used to park our trash trucks, like the 100 acres in South Sacramento we just bought 3 years ago, like the land behind Cal Expo. I vehemently oppose using our city parks for homeless facilities. And Dr. Flo, yes, I was concerned at our February forum at SACB when you proposed using city parks for homelessness, because there are bathrooms, water, and trash at city parks. We can pull up the SACB article to verify this. And so I think that's a terrible idea. I'm not sure any city park in Sacramento which would be appropriate for that. But more importantly, that are better places where people can go. We have other locations, city courtyards, Caltrans lots where people can go. Because we all agree we need to tell people, you know what, you can't camp in front of this business at Casa de Español. But here's where you can go, and tell people where they can go. Lastly, we need to focus on behavioral health and help implement laws to get people treatment for undiagnosed mental health issues that we're facing.
Kevin, the next question, you can expound on that. Sacramento has seen efforts. Oh, by the way, I just wanted to say, if you have a question and you've written on a card, bring it on up, or raise your hand and somebody will bring it. Kathy will grab those because we might have a little time. Kevin, Sacramento has seen efforts to balance compassionate responses to unhoused with the concerns of business owners. How would you strike this balance, and what specific steps would you take to ensure that local businesses can thrive while addressing the housing crisis?
Yeah, this is the issue wherever we go. We talk about neighborhood issues, public safety issues, small business issues, is how we get a handle on homelessness. So the one thing that I did run out of time there, so it worked out, thank you very much, is not all homeless have untreated mental illness, mental health. But too often I talk to business leaders, law enforcement or firefighters, DCR, and families that talk about individuals that are being untreated. So I do support these new laws like care courts, which direct people to treatment. Sometimes people need treatment even though they don't want it. So I think we need to have that, implement that here in Sacramento, because there's a small number of people that are homeless that create the most amount of problems in our neighborhoods. And so zeroing in on that, giving tools for our law enforcement officers and our paramedics, our first responders, to deal with that population is, I think, key. And that's one of the benefits of me being mayor, because I know how to use state government and draw down our resources. You all passed a few months ago Prop 1, which is going to refund essentially the state hospital system we used to have to treat people with mental illness. Well, there's hundreds of millions of dollars going out right now to cities. I'm trying to make Sacramento to be first in line to get a project over off of Arden Way and one over there in the Little Saigon, because we need to make sure we maximize our resources to help small businesses and individuals, because this issue is super connected. The issue of homelessness, addiction, and mental health, we need to work on in partnership, and that goes back to working with our county. So to helping businesses thrive, we need to address this, but also we need to bring about compassion. I concur that we need to tell people where they can go and where they can't go. We also need to connect the dots to have people be able to sign up for Medi-Cal, get on their treatment schedule, focus on social services to help people while they're getting housed in an emergency shelter, to focus on their behavioral health challenges as well. Thank you.
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes. Sacramento has seen efforts to balance compassionate responses to the unhoused with the concerns of business owners. How would you strike this balance, and what specific steps would you take to ensure that local businesses can thrive while addressing the housing crisis?
So, lucky for us, the compassionate solution is also the effective one. Because right now, what we have done is we have taken a couple hundred people who do have actually major mental health issues, and we are cycling them in and out of the emergency department, which is the most expensive way to get health care. And we're cycling them in and out of our jails, which is the most expensive way, and pardon the expression, but to provide housing. It's also counterproductive. And then we're cycling people in and out of calls for service for 911, for our police and fire. And these individuals are costing each of those systems together about $1 million per year. Except we're on a hamster wheel where we get no closer to providing long-term care. So when we're talking about them, I think about my little cousin Ade, who has cerebral palsy, and who we have had a plan for since he was little to make sure that once my cousins, his parents, pass away, his care is still insured. But the challenge is that when people have the onset of major mental health issues, they're usually adults already, and we don't have a similar plan. So instead, our plan is to arrest them and to move them in and out and send them to the emergency departments with no long-term plan. And so they languish on our streets for years. And it's bad for our businesses, it's bad for them, and it's bad for everybody who lives in Sacramento. So let's work together with our street medicine teams and with Elica and with UC Davis. Let's actually coordinate the existing services we have so that when people cycle in, we can actually put them on a path to success. Jail is not a path to success. It has failed over and over again. Sweeps are not a path to success. In fact, all it does is sweep people from your house to your house to your house with no actual plan for how we're going to take care of people. So what we are going to do is coordinate these services so we can get these 200 to 300 people off the streets as quickly as possible. They are known entities. Our business improvement districts have been working with them. So have our neighborhood associations and our nonprofits. We're just not working together to be able to have a plan for their long-term care, and we can. And so that's how we address this challenge.
Okay, Flo, I'm going to combine these two questions about the arts in Sacramento. What are your planned policies to support working artists and the creative economy? And what have you done and what will you do for the arts in Sacramento? And if you could include this question, will you work to reinstate the transit occupancy tax, TOT, to support the arts?
Okay, so one of the things that our working artists need is for us to be able to create an environment where entrepreneurs can thrive. So I think we talked already about some of the necessary conditions to make sure that when artists are starting up, that we are able to support them and not overburden them with high costs, that we are thinking about the cost of housing in this region and making sure people can afford to live here, and putting together plans to keep people housed and make sure that we are building more housing at an effective and also at an appropriate price point. That includes being able to do deed restrictions and other ways that we really ensure that our housing is built at every level and that we have a priority on making sure that it's at affordable price points for the actual incomes that people have in our region. When it comes to our creative economy, that was actually one of the promises, again, of Measure U. It's why I was so excited to be on that committee, because I thought we were going to be helping to be able to make strategic investments across our city. But I still live on with the goal of doing exactly that, because it's a matter of trust to me with the voters. We cannot go back to the voters to ask for anything else before we make right on what we promised them we were going to do. And so that's a high priority for me, that we're thinking about how do we make investments, but also how do we actually run campaigns that encourage people to support local artists. You know, I've been talking a lot to Visit Sacramento, and they've been talking about the ways in which new people come into our city. And that is certainly important, But how many of us have taken time to actually visit Sacramento, to see what the other side of town has to offer, to experience the real rich diversity that is here? We need to also be encouraging our own residents to be visiting and supporting. And I want to be able to roll out initiatives that focus specifically on that. More local spending, more supporting of the arts, more experiences packaged together. So you can go and see some of our great murals and go to some of our art museums and exhibits and listen to live music and actually have a very 916 experience. Because we are not a diet version of the Bay Area or a little version of Southern California. We are big Sacramento, and it's more than the Kings that should make us proud.
You know, our local arts are something that make Sacramento a special place. I've been here literally on the block outside here, outside of Casa de Español, when they had a block party and live music here, bringing out people throughout Sacramento to focus on the best of Sacramento. And that's one thing that we need to expand upon. I'm excited that young people are flocking to Sacramento, but we need to make sure that we continue this for years to come. I think about the generation of my teenage girls, or 16-year-olds, and what's it going to look like 8 years from now? Are we going to make sure we have a thriving sports and music and food and art scene? And that's so key to Sacramento. But when I think about arts, we need to make sure that we don't always keep our eyes on the important marquee art projects in Sacramento. The Beastie Theater, but smaller projects. Teatro Nagal, projects that aren't always known about by the masses throughout Sacramento, but are known by the community. One thing that I love the city did right during the pandemic, when they got their one-time funds, their reinvestment funds, they funded smaller micro grants to small arts programs, sometimes $5,000 or less. Pop-up arts programs that made a world of difference to thriving artists at the small scale, and how you can build them up to go somewhere else. So there's no magic pot of money right now in the city of Sacramento. I'm not going to promise you to spend a bunch of general fund right now, because we'd be lying to you. We have a $40 million deficit. But it's certainly something that's a priority of mine as we look at our transit occupancy tax dollars and dollars that are dedicated to the arts. I'll make sure that we focus on all of arts community, especially small arts communities throughout the diverse neighborhoods of Sacramento.
All right, Kevin, what are you going to do for the population that doesn't have the political connections and resources? How will you navigate inclusion for all and tackle keeping our poor and people of color in their old neighborhoods?
Well, I guess the big picture is I come from a family that didn't have a lot. We grew up here in Sacramento, a single-parent home, 9 homes in my first 13 or so years of Sacramento. I know what it's like to struggle. I know my family benefited from programs that governments offer. So I'll make sure that when I look at my role as Sacramento, focus on those without a voice. I've taken the hits from special interests in election after election, because I've always voted with the people, with people without a voice, even in this election for mayor. I'm barely here standing today after being attacked by $1 million for standing up for renters, to make sure that fast food workers had a living wage when they work in poverty. So those are the values that I'll bring to the mayor's office. Those are the values that I've always had as an elected leader. It's not something that I'm promising today running for mayor. It's my record. It's who I am. When we had a tough reconciliation after the summer of George Floyd, I leaned in to focus on how we could reform our police practices to hold our police departments more accountable for people to cross the line. I focused on programs to help formerly incarcerated reintegrated back into society, to give them a leg up, to help them and help society at the same time. So it's my values, it's how I've led for my entire career, and what I will do as mayor of Sacramento as well. Thank you.
This is one of the challenges in Sacramento, is that we have campaigns, and then we have the way that campaigns change who we are. And I've been really honest with you up front about the positions that I hold, even if we don't agree, because I trust that voters can understand where I'm coming from and will actually trust someone who's honest with them. And so it is important when we're thinking about how we are going to address our communities that we're honest about what we can do and where we stand on things. And so I have stood with our communities to make sure that affordability is something that is important. And I'm saying up front where I stand on the propositions that are on our ballot right now, and also saying that I don't want to see us roll back some of the progress that we've made. But now that we're in a tight race with someone who's perceived to be more progressive, my opponent is shifting tone. Now it's, let's arrest people who are in poverty instead of actually using appropriate and proven strategies to address homelessness and housing. Now it's avoiding being able to say where we stand on propositions that in the past we've stood firm on. Now it's toying with taking police money after having said 4 years ago, signed an own pledge saying, I don't take police money. And so I think one of the things we need to restore here is trust. Trust that our communities will be listened to. Trust that our values are not going to change because it's politically expedient. Trust that when you sit down with the mayor of Sacramento, her yes is yes and her no means no, and that she's not going to waffle on her core values. And so that is the choice I think that Sacramentans have in this election, is deciding on someone who you may not agree with on everything, but is going to tell you the truth, and someone whose opinions and positions are changing when it feels politically expedient.
Okay, Flo. One of you will be inheriting a city with a huge budget deficit. What plans do you have to improve specifically our 311 services? This voter says, in my neighborhood, we had to wait over 6 months to have our street lights replaced.
That starts with me. Yes, okay. Yes. So this is one of the things that we're talking about when we're talking about making this a city that works. So when you put in a request, there should be a time frame on when you're going to get a response on that request, and you should know where it is in the city's priority in terms of its budget. We have seen so many changes happening that are not aware, that everybody is not aware of, that have changed our ability to be responsive. And one of them is, do we have the right people hired to be responsive to these issues? Have we set up our city actually for success? And that has to be a priority. We have to look at our systems and say, how many calls do we get to 311? And do we have enough people dedicated to responding to the calls? Do we have a system that's set up to be responsive so that when you put in a request, you hear back from someone? And when those requests come in, how are they prioritized and how can you expect? So I can't say up front if 6 months was a reasonable amount of time or not. But what I can say is you shouldn't have been waiting, not knowing whether it was going to be 6 days, 6 weeks, or 6 months. You should have known where your request was in the process, and we should have had a way to be able to determine its priority amongst the other things that were happening in the city and making sure that we could address it as quickly as possible. And so that's going to be my priority to make sure our city works, is to make sure that we have systems in place so that you know what's going on, there is transparency, and we can all be held accountable to certain professional standards about responsiveness, timeliness, and how long it takes for us to complete a task.
Repeating the question, one of you will be inheriting a city with a huge budget deficit. What plans do you have to improve our 311 services? And as this voter said, in his neighborhood or her neighborhood, we had to wait over 6 months to have our streetlights replaced.
Yeah, I think the big picture is our first few words. One of us will be inheriting a major budget deficit, and that's a problem. And as I said earlier, it's a problem that should make us all greatly concerned. I'm concerned as someone who helped write city budgets before in the past. We have increasing revenue year after year, but a deficit. So it begs the question, are we spending money outside our core? 311 is the core of the city of Sacramento. So is public safety and fire and police and our parks. So I want to make sure that I step in on day one and look at the city budget and to see, were we spending money after the pandemic on programs that look good on a piece of paper, but that don't match with the core city values and what constituents are consistently asking for. We need to have somebody who's going to make tough decisions. That's something that I've done. I've worked overseeing the state budget for 9 years, having to make tough decisions. I had to lead the city council, put Measure U on the ballot to restore city services after we laid off police and firefighters and shut pools in 2012. So we need someone to look at the city budget and make these tough choices. But big picture, what I want to do so we don't have to make tough choices is grow the economy. I keep looking at these state buildings over here. 45% of them pay zero property taxes. What if we put them in private sector hands? Built more housing for the masses of Sacramento, including people who are lower income and coming out of homelessness. Getting those properties on the city tax rolls, bringing in more money. Streamlining our building department to welcoming business here in Sacramento. Waiving fees for first years for small businesses to bring in more revenue. Supporting projects like Aggie Square to bring in more jobs to Sacramento. How can we grow our economy to make sure we have all the services that we need throughout our neighborhoods?
Okay, this is the last question before closing remarks. Interesting question. Kevin, if you are elected, this is for both of you, of course. If you are elected mayor of Sacramento, are there any proposals from your opponent you would add to your work plan? And what would you like to be known for?
What would I like to, I'll answer them both. But what would I like to be known for is somebody who's hardworking and effective. At the end of the day, people come up to me all the time. They're like, McCarty, you're my guy. You're my supervisor, senator, congress member, council member, assembly person. And I'm like, yes, I represent you. How can I help you? So people have problems. Neighborhoods have problems. The Hispanic Chamber of Commerce membership has problems. What can I do to help connect the dots and solve problems? I've always been about solving problems, working with others. It's not always about me. It's working with partners like you, working with our other elected leaders, working with my colleagues on the city council to bring about results. That's what I wanted to be remembered for, as somebody who was an effective leader of Sacramento, bringing their experience to the table to solve the issues of the day. This is a very tough job, and having somebody who understands how it all works is very important. As far as Dr. Kofer, I don't have one idea right now, but I know that you are a fabulous voice here in Sacramento, always speaking truth to power, sharing your ideas. And if I'm fortunate enough to be mayor, I'd be glad to sit down with you and look for ideas how we could partner Sacramento to move us forward. Thank you.
This is such a great question, and I want to thank whoever asked it, because what I think it speaks to is legacy. And I would actually like the legacy that I leave on Sacramento to not be about me, but to be about us. I would like for, in the future, someone to come along and try to ram some proposal down some community's throat. And for somebody who's never heard my name, doesn't know I used to be mayor, to say, that's not what we do here. We listen to our community. We invite people into the process. I want to change the norms of how the city of Sacramento is run, so that people here feel included in the process, that we're not asking these same questions 2 generations from now. What are we going to do to support Latino businesses? Why don't we have anybody in our city at the appropriate levels who reflect the diversity of our city? I want that to be the legacy that we lead. It's very much a public health legacy. Nobody remembers who came up with, some of the proposals that have made our world a better place and doubled our life expectancy. But the impact is what matters most, and that's what I would like to leave as a legacy for the city of Sacramento. As for my opponent's proposals, I think one of the ones he's talked about is having, food trucks, and really taking advantage of the fact that we have so many great vendors in our city. And, and I have heard so much of my thinking on these issues, my public health approach to these things, that has come from conversations with you, reflected in my opponent's talking points. So I think there's a lot that will be similar about us if our talking points reflect how we plan to govern, because so much of our framing of this through a public health lens has been adopted by my opposition because they're popular ideas that people respond to. And so I look forward to being able to bring those to fruition, because there's no better, form of flattery than somebody, copying some of the ideas that your community has come up with.
Okay, time for closing remarks, and we begin with Kevin McCarty.
First of all, thank you for coming out on this dark night. And where are those Chando's tacos afterwards? Right over here. Okay. This is an important decision for the city of Sacramento. And, this is something that we need to think about, the future of Sacramento. What city do we want to, what do we want the city to look like 1 year, 5 years, 10 years from now? That's why I'm signing up for this position, to use my experience as a problem solver, focusing on issues big and small. When I was a young council member, a neighborhood said, you know what, we lost our group. We lost our Little League baseball program. Can you help us? I signed up the Junior Giants program and have boys and girls playing there every year now for free, every summer. Now there's 1,000 kids that play in Sacramento because of the program that I created. So it's about solving problems. After the state workers left downtown and started working from home, I focused on how could we make lemonade from the lemons. I wrote the law converting state buildings into housing, bringing more housing downtown, focusing on revitalizing our city core. I've always focused on solutions to our problems, big and small. That's all I'll do with as mayor, partnering with our community, with many of you here today. I'm proud. I'm proud of the support I have to date. I have diverse groups supporting me, from our firefighters to our police officers, from our small businesses, from the Metro Chamber to the Labor Council and the building trades, groups that don't always get along. I have council members from all across Sacramento and supervisors who know my work, know I can partner to get things done. Because at the end of the day, this is about reflecting our values and being effective and moving Sacramento forward. That's why I'm asking for your vote to be the next mayor of Sacramento. It's a city that's done so much for me, the city where we're raising our teenage daughters, and I believe in the city of Sacramento. You know, a lot of people say we have problems, too much crime, too much homelessness, too much red tape. That's true. But if you look at a bottle of water right here that's half full, we have a lot of greatness here. We have groups like the Hispanic Chamber. We have Casa de Español, which is serving our community. We need to make sure we expand upon what we have and build upon the future. And I respectfully ask for your vote. Thank you.
Sacramento is truly a wonderful place to live. I love the fact that you can get delicious food from every corner of the world, that you can go to events constantly in Sacramento where you can dance and enjoy local art and just really enjoy your community members. And I love that this is a place full of people who want to be involved in their community. You know, one of the most proud things about this place is that 30,000 people wake up early every Thanksgiving morning to do Run to Feed the Hungry to support our food bank. This is a place where we are really proud to be here. And at the same time, we have challenges. Challenges like leading the country in homelessness in ways that, you know, we don't want to be leading because we're not doing well. And really making some people question if there's a bright future for them right here. And thankfully, you know, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I saw models of how a city can recover from some of the challenges it's facing. And I've also lived here and watched people put together fantastic plans. And so I want to bring my executive leadership experience, having helped to make sure that birth control was included with no copay in Obamacare after it was passed. At the state level, lowering our infant mortality rate by 14% by working both in conservative and in more progressive areas across the state to be able to improve women's health prior to, during, and after pregnancy. And even at the local level, working with our public defenders and our public health departments to be able to address emergency response, in particular after our COVID-19 pandemic. And so I want to bring to bear that executive leadership experience to be able to fill in the gaps, because Sacramento deserves to have a government that respects us, that partners with us, and that truly has a vision for the future. We do not want more of the same. We want this to be an inflection point for our city where we really start building together and capitalizing on all of what is great about this place. And our campaign, reaching out in so many different ways, being endorsed by both of the Latino organizations in the Democratic Club and 7 others, including Latinx Young Dems and the Latino Democratic Club, is excited to be your partner. And we respectfully ask for the opportunity to earn your vote over the next 35 days.
Aren't we lucky to have 2 very passionate candidates for mayor of Sacramento that want to make our city better? Will you please join me in thanking them for running?